In previous videos, we look at why LangGraph might make sense for us that build agentic workflows. We look a bit deeper and try to understand why not only it is interesting compare the other options, but also why it makes sense that use LangGraph instead of using our own implementation. Now that we realize, indeed, it makes sense that work with LangGraph, we're asking ourselves, what are the core components of LangGraph such that we can start developing agentic workflows, AI agents, and more? Well, let's look at them. If we have to decide what are the three key components of LangGraph, we can say it is the state, the nodes, and the edges. How do they interact with each other? Well, if we think about these three components that LangGraph provides, we see that the state is basically the shared data structure, whereas the nodes, we can put it in simple terms and see them as they're the ones that are doing the work, whereas the edges are defining the next steps. This might sound a bit abstract. How, or rather what, does this mean in practice? The state, it is shared across application. And it is on a constant loop, reading and updating based on what's happening in our node functions. Whereas the purpose of the agents is to route the nodes across our graph. How are they executed? Let us think about a more complicated example. Let's imagine the following situation. We have an initial state. For example, if we go back to our example of booking a flight, the initial state might be that we have an airport that we want to fly from and an airport that we want to land in there. So we have that. We may have also some preferences about times and dates, and also likely a budget. We execute that, and this is sent the first node. And this node might have to decide and bifurcate for other options. For example, what happens if I book through airline A or through airline B, or maybe different payment processors and so on. This will be sending a message, and this makes also that we have the date, the state, as we're moving through the nodes. Once we have reached the last node, there will be a HAL vote that decide what should be the next super step. So we can see that super steps are like subsets of our graph that go from initial state all the way the next super step. And in between, there can be quantum logic behind. So if we look at how this looks deeper in our own application, let's think, for example, another example that we have on what's the capital of Italy. And let us assume that this requires knowledge that is not available in the knowledge base of our agent. because, for example, the contract change capitals, or there is new information about it. It doesn't say something. Our user requires the agent. Where is the agent? This generates state. The agent moves along and is doing that through the edges. The edges decide where it has to go. And we can face situations where, for example, we have reached our end state. The capital of Italy is Rome. But there can be situations where we need to request tools that update the state, creating this loop. But also here, we see that even for situations where we might not have this loop interaction, we might not require tool calling and so on. Just for example, querying an LLM the request the capital of a country, we can still use LangGraph for this problem. It will be a linear sequence of our nodes going across multiple edges and updating that state. It's very attractive, for example, to have code that is more robust, that is easier to follow and to debug, if necessary. So if we think about what we have learned about the three components, the three core elements that LangGraph offers, we have the nodes. These nodes can be agents, tools, functions. It's pretty much logic, whereas the edges are connecting these nodes, their relationships, and these edges can have some logic conditioning. Where should the connection go to? What should be the next agent, the next step? This is only a quick overview. Therefore, let's look further each of these elements. What does it mean in practice? How are they implemented? How can we use them?